Hello everyone, welcome back to Language Travel Adoptee with me, Emily, and I'm taking you guys to a really interesting combination of a bookstore slash Turkish German cafe. So this will be a really interesting experience. I did start learning Turkish originally because I was spending about a year in Germany and I noticed all of the Turkish speakers. So I feel like going back to this cafe to study a little bit of Turkish will be very fitting. Now I found a really cute place. There's almost no one here, by the way, which is really good, to start my studies for Turkish, and then a little bit of Spanish, and then probably if I have energy at the end, I'll do a little bit of Arabic. Now you'll see I was running around all of the city trying to find a really good place for this, so had to take some water, and then I am seeing what I should order from the menu. Even though my Turkish level is more than enough to order from a cafe, I feel like the introvert in me sometimes still holds back and sometimes still feels a little bit scared to order something. It may also be a little bit of my social anxiety getting in the way. However, I do want to make sure I buy something from the establishment where they're letting me film so graciously.
Sadece bir tane vanilya milkshake alabilir miyim?
Vanilyalı milkshake.
Evet.
Milkshake yok maalesef.
Tamam.
Dondurmamız yok şu an, o yüzden yapamıyoruz.
Sadece kahveyle yapılabilir. Tamam.
Hepsi olur.
Ve bu ne?
Nasıl tarif
Frozen
ederim?
şu buz, şurup, frappe'den farklı. Frappe'de double espresso oluyor.
Tamam. Yani kahve var burada,
Evet.
kahve yok. Sadece bir tane çilek alabilir miyim?
Çilek frozen.
Evet.
Tamam. Ben de sizin için getireceğim.
Getireceğiz size.
Tamam.
Okay, so after my initial disappointment of finding that they don't actually put ice cream for what they labeled as milkshake, I still got a really delicious drink of strawberry. Because I am in Turkey and I decided to just use my American number instead of getting a physical Turkish SIM card that will give me a Turkish number, I unfortunately have a lot of trouble logging into Wi-Fi here in Istanbul at the cafes. So we are not going to actually use my laptop for this round, unfortunately. However, I did bring my Istanbul books. I am going into my C1 Turkish class. We just began, but I must admit I have skipped probably 4 times in these last 3 weeks. Needless to say, I feel a little bit behind in Turkish, and you can see I'm doing just some simple review exercises. This is my first time going through the actual workbook. I am a little bit nervous about going back to Turkish class after a break, and this is always one of the mental blocks whenever I take an academic approach to language study, especially if I am taking a class, because then I think, oh man, like people are really going to notice in my spoken Turkish when I have to speak in front of class. Oh, you know, she didn't get this or this right. Those really small scenarios of what if black and white thinking that sometimes come up when we do get nervous about performing in our target language. However, I know that just like me, everyone else is in the class for a reason, right? So I usually try to talk myself down and say, we're all here to learn. Everyone has made a mistake before, and in the 8 or 9 weeks that I've been with the same people, no one has held it against me if I cannot express an idea fully. And I'm also trying to remember that everyone else here, besides me, is not studying the language out of pure passion. They are actually here to honestly live here permanently. So they need this language more, and they probably also have a lot more engagement with the language. Here I have just been sharing my Airbnb with different tourists, so there's a lot of English spoken around me, and I don't have as much contact with the language outside of class. It's sometimes really hard to surround myself just with Turkish during this experience. However, I think I'm doing a pretty good job in just how I direct myself. So now it's time for a little bit of Spanish learning. Now, what I love to do with some of my languages, especially if they're not a main focus for me this year, is to maintain them. And I think sometimes we can get overwhelmed with thinking that we have to actively study all of our languages in order to maintain them. But you can see here, I'm simply just using Deutsche Welle, Español, in order to get some listening in. And it's really not a big energy commitment in order to do this. I can do this every day, and I usually include about anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. And especially after an active study session with one of my more main focus languages, it's really nice to just have a little bit of contact with some of my more advanced language where I don't feel like I'm struggling as much in comparison to a really active study session that I just did with Turkish. Now, our final stop for the day is Arabic. And luckily, over this past weekend, I could have a impromptu Arabic lesson with one of my friends who is a native speaker. But you can see the list is super, super long. So I decided to use this time for some Arabic study, putting in all of the phrases and new words that I learned from my friend into a new flashcard set. I love using Quizlet, and you'll also see that we're not gonna make a very creative name here, just the month of where I learned all of these words, and I am going to copy and try to paste into my very first flashcard. What I also like to do is some language stacking in between all of the words that I'm trying to learn in Arabic, my weaker language, and using the translations, trying to think of them from the top of my head, and put them in Turkish. And after that, I'll just do a quick review of all of the expressions I learned scrolling through the cards. And now I am going to check out, pay for my drink, and I'm thinking about looking through some of the books that I saw downstairs because I don't know about you guys, but I absolutely love bookstores in other languages. Now, as I'm looking through some of these books, a lot of them are only written in German, and I already have a lot of German books at home, and usually I actually prefer reading articles in German rather than books, so I was hoping to find some Turkish books, but it seems they only have books written in German, which is okay. I think I'm probably going to go to a really popular spot called Kadıköy, which has a ton more bookstores that I can look through, and all of the books there are definitely written in Turkish. So thank you guys for joining me on this very sunny day. I am on the way to my Turkish class right now, actually. Thank you for coming to study with me a little bit in this wonderful cafe. We'll see each other in another video.